sighed deeply and checked off the second hurdle of his night's work. He shifted in his seat, letting his left arm hang out the driver's window. The night air offered no relief, but Joe began to feel a rush of freedom such as he'd never known before. Certainly not since leaving home at 15, unsure how he would find work to support himself. Not since he met Helen and fell in love and was determined to make a living to take care of both of them, to have a real house of their own, and children. But it was not until he got wind of his boss's plans to steal a lot of money from the Farm Association's coffers, where he was president and treasurer, that Joe found the courage and wherewithal to take some of the money his boss was planning to take for himself. But Joe changed his mind. What the hell? He took it all. The beauty of his plan, Joe thought with satisfaction, was that his boss would have no idea what had happened to his ill-gained riches or what had happened to his employee. Such were the sometimes benefits of being a black man treated like he was invisible, while his white boss discussed, in his presence, the intricate details of nefarious plans to steal. Joe felt no guilt for what he'd just done. The country was a mess, and it was every man for himself, especially if he was black. He picked up a little speed in the silent dark of the night, anxious to get home. He'd told Helen not to wait up because he had no idea when he'd be returning, if at all. There was always that possibility. He made a slow turn onto the dirt road that led through the center of his neighborhood of attached wooden houses that were only 30 feet wide and identical in design. There were stray dogs roaming or sleeping on empty, narrow porches. Joe went 2 blocks to the very end and then turned left to approach the back of the line of houses and into a narrow alley that was only 2 feet wider than the truck. He stopped in front of a recessed door at the back of one of the houses, with just enough room for him to get the door open and squeeze out. The back door opened, and a slender woman gasped, "Joe!" and propelled herself into his arms. He held and squeezed Helen briefly, feeling the hard, round bump of her pregnancy pushing into him. He indicated that she was to be quiet and pushed her back toward the house. Then he made sure the bed and cab were secure, removing one small bag to carry into the house with him. It was filled with a scattering of bills in small denominations that he would use to pay their way when he and Helen left before dawn and drove south. He hadn't told her where they were going. He still had no final destination. And the less she knew, the better. Joe was confident that he'd know when they were to stop, when they'd found someplace where they would be safe and could call home. The day Joe finished constructing the second of 2 secret crawl spaces disguised as utility closets, Helen went into labor. They'd only been in the house a few months, Joe working mysteriously at night and not explaining anything to his wife about why he was adding the spaces, like small, deep, but narrow closets, one at each end of the house. She only knew that they now had a house to live in. It had been trashed and abandoned by previous owners, and Joe made a convincing argument to the local municipal government for buying it on the cheap and promising to repair and fix up the eyesore. But they made it difficult. They weren't giving anything away to some stranger who'd arrived from nowhere. Why should they accommodate an itinerant black man who'd driven into town one day claiming he was forced out of Central Valley, where he'd worked in farming, by the long, never-ending droughts and ruined crops? Fine. Pay $500 and not a penny less. Joe calmly said he could do it if they gave him a month to earn the money. The deal was set. The die was cast. He waited out the month and returned with $500, all the bills carefully soiled and abused to give the look of use and constant exchange. Joe took his receipt and immediately went to the land office to obtain an official